everyone, and welcome to Trophy Horses episode 619. I'm your host this week, Alex.
Wait.
You are listening to Trophy Horse.
Oh.
With your hosts, Tricky Nick, Alex, I Yield to No One, Sid, and Ender Phoenix.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Trophy Horses episode 619. I'm your host this week, Alex, and with me, he always brings the awesome. It's I Yield to No One.
Hi.
And my other co-host, he's got the meanest Soundwave collection you'll ever see. It's Matt.
You know, I was trying to get this streaming thing together so that way Tricky didn't have to hit the ones and the twos in the background, but I failed. So, yeah, that's how my Sunday's going.
Matt, I want you to know that you would have done better than I would have. It would have crashed and burned with me. So just like a 500K bomb in Helldivers, it would have just crashed and burned. So you gave it your all, sir, and I'm sure next time we'll get it all squared away. Yes. Tricky is in the background. He will not be joining us on this week's show. He posted something on Facebook. I won't go into great detail. Tricky is home. He's fine, but he did have to go to the hospital for a little bit. But if you're curious, he posted something on Facebook, so it's out there. I just don't want to, throw his business out here on the podcast without him here to explain. But Tricky is doing okay. He's recovering. He's home, so hopefully we hope to have Tricky back as soon as possible. But yeah. The three amigos this week, and guys, now that we know Tricky's back home, how's everybody doing?
It's been a good weekend.
And Matt, for you, how's your week been?
It was a crazy week. I was actually down in Atlantic City for a conference on Monday through Wednesday.
Conference on gambling, huh?
I always ask the question, if you tried to get somebody to quit gambling, can you bet them that they can't quit gambling?
You can. Whether you're a dirty son of a bitch for doing so is another question. But I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure you'll. One last bet, a cheat bet, as Tricky would say there. One last cheat bet before you go cold turkey. But yeah. Could be better, could have our AC working, but we hope to have that fixed here since it's going to be in the 80s and upper 70s all week. And, AC, it's one of those things that you don't really appreciate until you don't have it. But we got fans going in the house, and what I'm really most worried about is the pets because they're here all day. I get to get in my car and go to work, but we worried about the pets. But yeah, could be doing a little better, but it also could be doing worse. So again, with what Tricky's been through, just glad to hear he's doing all right. So guys, I know with how busy your weeks have been, you've found some time to cut in some video games. So, well, I guess before we get to that, sorry, we just got a message from Tricky. Want to give a shout out to Saber in the chat. Saber says, yo, hope you're doing well, Saber. And Saber, hope you're excited to hear our updated trophy counts, or at least maybe updated trophy counts for one of us, because I don't think three of us have got any new trophies any time recently. Tricky is level 905 with a total trophy count of 30,283 with a platinum count of 839. And if you're wondering if Tricky had his PlayStation 5 with him while he was in the hospital, well, yes, he did. He did, in fact, have his PlayStation 5. Tricky never leaves home without it. I am level 502, total trophy count of 9,764, and a platinum count of 169 in 168 games. This continues my streak of not earning a trophy. Yeah, it rolls on, although that will likely change this week. Yield, sir?
Level 508, trophy count of 10099, and a plat count of 186.
Matt, sir, I know it doesn't change, but we still, for the sake of tradition, we got to ask you.
You didn't change for 2 weeks. Does it feel good? Do you feel like, relieved a little bit that you don't have this pressure on you? Because that's how I feel week after week.
It's been more than 2 weeks because I need to look up when I got the platinum trophy, but I swear it's been a month since I got a platinum trophy or any trophy at all.
Isn't it so relieving you don't have to worry about that?
I mean, honestly, like I'm not mad about it. Let's see, March 11th is when I got the platinum. I haven't earned a platinum trophy in going on 2 months, or not a platinum trophy, but I haven't earned a trophy in going on 2 months. And honestly, like I'm not that worried about it. Like I said, once I start my next game, I'm going to be all about getting them trophies. But I don't necessarily miss not game gobbling and moving from one game to the next, worrying about getting, another set of trophies soon after I get one platinum trophy. So
Tricky noted that he was in the hospital and he still earned trophies. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
He does like to say he's a trophy whore, a true trophy whore. So I guess game until the end.
I am level 220, 1,310 trophies with 0 platinums, but my latest that I earned was Find the Overseer in Fallout 76.
Really, the latest that you earned? You mean the latest trophy or the latest
latest
Steam
achievement?
Steam achievement. Okay, it's the same damn thing. It is the same thing. And then our friend Sid, our pal across the pond, is level 889, total trophy count of 26,951, and a platinum count of 841, still 2 above Tricky. So Tricky can earn only once while, at the toilet, in the hospital, at work, but Sid may just be that one big old tidal wave he just can't overcome. Can't row over. Well, I tried to jump to this earlier, but now it's more appropriate. Talk about what we've been playing this week. We know Tricky obviously got some time in while he was laid up in the hospital bed, but I would assume that all 3 of us have had more free range with our gameplay. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you've been up to this week?
So the Steam Deck kept me company since I was traveling, and I got into some mobile gaming. By that, I mean I ended up did some Fallout 76, which you can do from the Steam Deck. It works quite well. I did do some Helldivers when I was back home, but not much, just enough to earn the medals that we got from the major order. And the main game I've been playing this week, I picked it up on sale so I could play it on the go, was Dave the Diver. I've put about 2.5, 3 hours into that game. And man, is that a fun little game. Perfect for the Steam Deck, perfect on the go.
Jeff Hanna would not lead us astray. I'll tell you that much.
Mm.
And this is proof to that pudding. It's 100% accurate. Jeff would not lead us astray, and Dave the Diver is the ultimate case of that. But Matt, I wanted to ask you, or I had a question that has now slipped my mind. What was the first thing you were playing that you mentioned?
Fallout 76.
Oh, I did want to say, I don't know if you guys have noticed or if anyone has finished watching Fallout on Amazon Prime, but kind of, lends credence to why, when a movie's coming out, if there's a movie tie-in, they try to get the game in or out at the same time. The TV series for Amazon has made a massive impact on the interest in Fallout 76 and Fallout 4 because the amount of people playing those games has risen considerably ever since the TV series came out. So that's maybe why we get a lot of crappy movie tie-in games, is because they want to take advantage of all the popularity surrounding, either the television show or the movie. Matt, have you watched any TV show or finished it, or I'm assuming you've at least looked at it a little bit?
Yes, I finished it last week, I think it was. And I think Tricky finished it or is about to finish it, and we're going to do our Patreon episode on it in the near future. As we mentioned last week, Alex, if you finish it, you're welcome to jump in with us.
I believe we're on
all 8 episodes.
We're on episode 7, so we're very nearly done. And you mean that Patreon episode that Tricky initially didn't invite me to? Is that the one we were talking about?
I'm not here to start wars, Alex.
No, but that's me. I'm just asking for you for just an honest answer.
Yield, what have you been playing?
Now, one more question for you, Matt, before we go to Yield, because I'm curious, because you own both a Switch and a Steam Deck. I'm assuming you don't take both on the road with you. So do you usually take the Steam Deck when you're on the road and forsake the Switch, or do you sometimes take the Switch? Because I just kind of wonder if the Steam Deck has completely supplanted the Switch, because I'm assuming before, without Steam Deck, you were just taking the Switch with you.
It really depends. I mean, if there's a game that I'm playing on Switch that I'm actively engaged in, then the Switch will come with me. But the Steam Deck just gives me so many more games to play. Obviously, my Steam library is massive compared to the Switch, and many of those games are playable on the Steam Deck. So the Steam Deck gives me the ability to play a multitude of different things depending on how the mood fancies. But on my Switch, I do have Super Mario RPG, which that remake that came out, and I've been playing that. So it really depends on what I feel like.
Matt, I think I know what the problem is. So you said you have far more games on your Steam Deck than on your Switch. Well, it's probably because you've been shopping at Walmart, where we went into the other day to buy a few things for the house, and there were 0 Switch games. None. Not even display case like games in the Switch section. I don't know if they were moving shit around, but there was just nothing, and it was a barren wasteland, speaking of Fallout. And I even sent a picture of the guys where there's just nothing in the case. So if Walmart ain't stocking like anything but the best sellers and then trying to cycle them out, after a short amount of time, there ain't no hope for big box retailers when it comes to physical games. Matt, did that picture shock you at all?
A little bit, but also I was in my Walmart this past weekend and it was full of games. And I've been seeing the pictures of the yellow tag games for a while now. And I mean, I expected to see more, but my Walmart is still fully stocked with all the games, the latest and greatest, and some of the older stuff.
Well, I guess that up there in New Jersey, y'all just get more respect than down here in the Midwest. Yield. What's the supply at your Walmart looking like? You've got to have a Walmart around you.
Well, there are several around me. I ain't been in one in a while, so I couldn't tell you. The last time I was in there, it was stocked.
You heard it here first. Yield hates Walmart.
Hey, man, a new Target opened up 5 minutes down the road for the Walmart. Guess where I'm going now instead of Walmart?
Hey, Target does have some really good deals if you catch it at the right time.
Target also has a dwindling physical supply, too.
Not my favorite place to shop, but my favorite place to deal shop.
Wait, like you don't like to shop at Target for just random odds and ends and home necessities? I thought that was everyone's go-to.
Well, considering it's farther away than Walmart, it's not my go-to. But when I'm near it, I do go into it to look for deals because I've got the best deals on video games at Target than I have anywhere else.
Oh, I thought you meant for shopping experience you didn't like Target, but it's just merely a driving distance.
Yeah, I like going into Target. I'm just not going to drive 45 minutes to go to one.
I'd say that's probably wise, especially with gas prices what they are. But speaking of deals, Yield.
Yeah.
You been finding any good deals in the video game sector, or you been playing any really good games?
I picked up, what was the game? Steamroll? Something like that. It was a $2 game, kind of a puzzle game, looked kind of fun. I picked that up. Other than that, I've been playing Rocket League, Sackboy: A Big Adventure, Helldivers 2, and The Witness have been my games this past week.
And I am likely going to join Matt shortly in Dave the Diver, experiencing that lovely little charming game. Not quite yet, though. I haven't been ready to jump in. Played some Rocket League this past week with Yield and Nitro, and they have the X-Men collaboration going on, X-Men 97, with Disney Plus. And I gotta say, it's a pretty good promotion. It's one of the few times when you can look at the free items you get for just doing stuff in the game. And it's better. All the free items are better overall than what you pay for the premium items in the shop. So this is a very good case of, hey man, they really gave us the best items for free. So I do appreciate that. And one of the negatives I will say is there is a Phoenix skin or decal for the cars that does look really cool because it's animated and you got the flames in the back with like the green and yellow suit in the front. But overall, most of the X-Men like costume decals they look really unnatural on the cars. They look kind of goofy, and I'm not a huge fan of them. But if you do like Gambit was like the free decal that we got for just doing the challenges. So they did give us one of the better ones for free. But overall, I would say a really good event because a lot of the best items you don't have to pay for. And that is always nice. And then just Helldivers 2. I likely will jump into Dave the Diver because I have pretty much bought all of the War Bond items in Helldivers 2, and I only have one more ship upgrade to do, and I already have all the stratagems. So I am damn near close to unlocking every single thing in that game, until they come out with a new war bond. But as is, at this point, I'm just kind of saving up resources, and when they release another war bond, I would probably guess here in another month or so, or within the next month and a half. But that not finishing up completely, I'll still play with the guys and people in the community, but I'm going to have more free time, and I think that's why I'm kind of aiming to jump into Dave the Diver this week and maybe earn a few trophies before we get to a full 2 months. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing in the roadmap for what I got going on here in the future. And the future is bleak for Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Matt, you guessed that they would get out 4 DLC packs, and even that may be generous because this article comes from Forbes and Paul Tassi. The headline reads, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League at 200 peak Steam players. At what point do you abandon a live roadmap? And again, thank you, Matt, for going through the article. This is Matt paraphrasing the article. While we don't have current numbers of active PlayStation players, total player count for Suicide Squad on Steam shows total current players having dropped to the low 200s. During its launch, the game peaked at 13,000 players and only rose to 3,000 during the Joker DLC. With the next 2 seasons planned as Mr. Freeze and Zoe Lawton, who is Deadshot's daughter, players have to wait for bigger names like Deathstroke's arrival in Season 4, which is 7 to 8 months out. The question becomes, with numbers this low, will Warner Brothers and Rocksteady keep their progress on the game, or will it become financially unstable to do so? Matt, you still sticking strong to that number 4? Will we get Deathstroke in this game?
I legitimately think that they're going to start giving up right around that.
Do you think that with how honestly, with how low players are on Steam, that's a very, I would say, indicative of the overall game community's response to this game. So, it's not like you have 200 people playing on Steam, at one point, and then you all of a sudden, have 500,000 playing on PlayStation. I would say that the PlayStation numbers are more than likely low too. Before they give up on this game completely, though, do you think that maybe this next month, I don't know if they've announced May or not. Have they announced the May games yet?
I think V posted something about it.
I saw something about there's supposed to be a really big game that we're supposed to get. I think that's what I saw.
I think that either Suicide Squad is going to be in May or in June. I think that they will try to give this game away for free and try to get people on board before they kill it off. Try to boost
player count.
Yeah. What do you think, Yield? Do you think that would work?
Well, no, not seeing these next 2 DLC packs. Mr. Freeze is probably my next favorite Batman character next to Batman, and you're giving me Mrs. Freeze and another daughter. I'm glad I didn't buy into the game, and I'm glad I didn't buy into the season pass because I would be severely disappointed in that.
Roboto loves in the chat, and he seems to think just because Tricky isn't here that we're smashing Suicide Squad. I think we've been smashing Suicide Squad since release. Do you guys disagree?
Honestly, smashing, I don't intend to shit talk the game because, again, this is just an article from Forbes that we're reading. I don't really find the Suicide Squad interesting as a group of villains unless you go a more dark route where King Shark and Killer Croc are just monstrous beasts that are just eviscerating people. But I know that Roboto Love has talked about how much he enjoys the game, and I get that. Your enjoyment of this game should not depend on anybody else's opinion. The problem is, though, with how much dwindling interest there is in the game, that is a concern because that is where you do need other people to take interest in the game if you have a live roadmap. Because if there's not more people buying in, then Warner Brothers, who is already, Warner Brothers Discovery, we know that they've been financially turbulent, for a bit now. And my bet is that they're not. If the numbers keep dwindling or even stay where they are, if they can't find a way to get these numbers up of people playing the game, there's no way they make it to all the end of the DLC. And for the people who like this game, for Tricky and for Roboto, I would like to see them come out with all the DLC. Am I going to buy in? Am I going to play the game? No, but me doing that and me not playing the game doesn't mean that they can't enjoy it as well. So I hope for the sake of this game and the people who enjoy it that all the DLCs come out. But given the downward trend that we've seen in the news coming out for Suicide Squad, I don't see how it's possible, especially with Warner Brothers Discovery at the helm. And again, I don't think anyone unfairly bashes this game. We may have made a few jokes here and there, but I don't think anyone maliciously wants this game to fail out of it.
So let me ask you this, Alex and Matt. If they offer it free for Plus, are you playing it?
Well, no, since I don't have Plus. But even if I did,
okay. I keep forgetting that Matt has basically gotten rid of all his subscriptions.
So here's the thing: even if they did, I wouldn't, because none of these characters interest me. I went to see the movies because they were fun popcorn flicks, but I'm not like some Suicide Squad diehard that goes in there and reads all the lore and loves all these characters. Again, I'm a Marvel guy more than DC, and I tried Marvel's Avengers and I freaking hated it. So it's like a DC game has little to no hope of getting me into the door. So I'm not the best test bed. And even with Roboto in chat saying, he's busting our chops and whatnot, that it does look bleak, not knowing what the PlayStation numbers are like, I don't know. The Steam numbers obviously is very open platform. The API is out there that people could tell where all these concurrent players are. But I mean, look at Battlefield 2142. That was it was pitiful. You couldn't find a game because there weren't enough players. Here, luckily, you only have a squad of 4 people to fill. So 200 players, you might be able to find a game. But Alex, when you and I were trying to get the Gigabash trophy for you, such difficulty finding a full match was a problem. And for people achievement hunting or trophy hunting, it's an issue. And I think putting it on Plus could boost numbers temporarily. I don't think it's enough to save the game.
So it may not be a perfect comparison, but you look at Helldivers and how most of the people that play that game are on PC. Matt, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong in this, but I would assume there's more PC players out there overall than there are PlayStation 5 owners. There's more people playing games on PC on Steam than there are PlayStation 5 owners.
There's millions of people on Steam concurrently every day. What games they're playing, mostly it's going to be your Dotas and your Counter-Strikes and your Team Fortress 2s and things like that. But you'd think with all the sales and everything that goes on the Steam platform that you'd have a decent amount of people. But a game that released in February and is now down to 200 concurrent players, again, you could play through the game single player. You don't necessarily need other people. So maybe everybody played through, beat the storyline, and is they're not playing it every day because they don't need to. Look at what happened to Pal World. Millions of people bought into this game and they did everything that there was to in the game, and now they're just waiting for updates. So maybe there's more people waiting for updates on Suicide Squad. That's a potential thing that could happen.
I just think that the Helldivers community is a good litmus test for how many people play on PC versus PS5. You have direct comparison where most of the audience is on PC. So I would think that a game like this, you would see something similar, or at least the numbers will be somewhere around the same, even if the PlayStation does have some of an uptick for Suicide Squad. The most troubling thing for me is, and Matt wrote this when he was paraphrasing everything, if you're going to get to DLC 4, which is of 13, correct? I think they planned 13. You got to wait 7 to 8 more months. 7 to 8 more months, which means to get to all 13, we're years out. And I just don't think Warner Bros. Discovery is willing. First of all, I don't think the fan base is going to stay there for that long because not only, that's a long time to wait, but also you have new games coming out all the time. Are you going to constantly draw people back to Suicide Squad, the same game, by releasing a new villain? I'm sure everyone has their favorite Batman villain, but 2-3 years down the road, are they going to be willing to keep investing in this game? And are people even going to be willing to come back, the people that are already playing it? I don't know. The Batman villains I like a lot. I think the Batman has some of the coolest villains in all of, superherodom, or whatever you would say, all of comic books. And they rival Marvel's like coolest villains. So I think this is like I'm more like with Matt. I'm more of a Marvel guy, but I think the Batman villains are super fucking cool, like a great rogues gallery. But having to wait years for them to get to everybody, where the game is already at it is with the player base, like people just constantly move on from live service games. They are constantly moving on, and a lot of people don't come back. So while like I said, I will repeat, I really hope all this DLC comes out for the people who enjoy this game. It just doesn't look good, and yeah, like it just the news continually gets worse for Suicide Squad. It never gets better. So I think that Rocksteady will go to PlayStation and say, can we please get this on PlayStation Plus? Or, if it's not already on Game Pass, they'll go to Microsoft and say, hey, can we please get this on Game Pass? They'll try some last resort thing before they throw in the towel. But if that doesn't do it for them, if that's not enough to support the game, there's no hope at this point. That's the only hope, is lowering the barrier to entry to free and hoping that people are willing to buy the DLC.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tricky's in chat back there talking that there's potential that the Justice League could come back in future expansions or seasons, that it would be a Justice League from a different dimension, which he says that would be stupid, but it could bring people back.
It could. It's just people move on from games, not just like Suicide Squad. There are so many live service games and multiplayer games and online games that just die off because there's something new to play. And people are always looking for something new to play. There are some games that have been able to thrive for years and years, but for the most part, people just move on from stuff. And that's not a knock on Suicide Squad. That's just the way that people play. Yield or Matt, you guys got anything else to add to this, or is there anything from chat that we want to throw in here into the discussion before we move on?
No.
No.
I'll tell you one group that would like to move on and hope that you forget everything that's gone on is Embracer Group, because it's been just nothing but a windfall of negative press for Embracer, who went on a shopping spree to collect as many game studios as they could, and well, what do you know, they couldn't manage them all and fucked up real bad. This comes from Embracer.com from a press release going to the source. The headline reads, Embracer Group announces its intention to transform into 3 standalone publicly listed entities at NASDAQ Stockholm. With all the news of Embracer's divestiture of various developers, more news comes out that the company announces it's split into 3 distinct entities. 3 companies are expected to consist of Asmodee, a major focus with tabletop gaming, including Catan, Seven Wonders, and Exploding Kittens. Coffee Stain and Friends, this will focus on less than AAA games for PC and consoles. Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends, the franchise will consist of Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider IPs. So, 3 separate, hubs for gaming there within, or, Embracer becoming 3 different arms, with each one of those being a different focus within the game industry, one on tabletop gaming and the other 2 when it comes to video games, with the final one, Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends, likely the home for whatever AAA games they do, being home of Tomb Raider. But Matt, your thoughts on this? I mean, they have continued to shake up and restructure to try to make their financial situation work best for them. But
5 minutes till game time. Some bugs.
Thanks, Tricky. Thanks for that interruption. Yeah, Matt, what are your thoughts on this? After Embracer's, is Embracer heading in the right way finally after all these many months of closing studios and firing people?
So with all the divestments that occurred, and now that you're having them split into 3 different entities, it kind of builds their overall resiliency that not everything is in one bucket, and therefore you might be able to cover some losses in different areas. I don't know if this changes anything in the grand scheme of things, other than it's now 3 different types of leaderships. Maybe they have some room for growth again. But, all the shakeups and everything that happened at Embracer, you can't have this giant conglomerate anymore. I think it showed that that's not good for the industry, gobbling up everything and making it so that way one entity owns all these different pieces on the chessboard. It really needs to be more like Hungry Hippos, where you're Yeah. Okay, maybe that's a bad example. Multiple
Hungry Hippos is never a bad example. It's a fun time, Matt. It's a
Well, you're not
gay
supposed
old
to
time.
gobble up everything up and then suddenly you win. No, that they were trying to be hungry hippos and they failed horribly. So
They gobbled everything up and then threw it all back up.
yeah, they were like, oh shit, I can't do all this. So yeah, no, maybe divesting into 3 different companies is going to give them some leeway or resiliency in the back end. I don't know.
But I mean, basically, since these are 3 standalone companies now, they sink or swim on their own. They can't rely on a parent company to save them because, as it says, it's going to be transformed into 3 standalone publicly listed companies. So each one of these arms is basically out on its own, right? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to all report back to like a single board or a single entity, but it seems like they're all going to stand on their own.
And Yield, do you think that with Embracer kind of divesting here and making cutting itself into smaller pieces, do you foresee this happening to any other entity in the games industry, or do you think this starts a movement where companies start to kind of slow down and become smaller again?
Well, I'm sure that other companies that have gobbled up other licensings or other companies will take a look at this and see if it works. And then if it works, that might be a way for them to branch off, still keep the licensings of those games, and kind of, well, here, you guys take these group of games and you're on your own. I mean, I hope it works, so that way, some licensings don't die. But I don't know, Embracer hasn't really pushed anything out since they gobbled everything up. So,
I think that, with the first arm, Asmodee, with the focus on tabletop gaming, like even if you go into Target now and you can't find all that many video games, you can still find a lot of tabletop games and a lot of card games, board games. So that's a pretty solid investment because, when people get together parties, board games are a lot of fun. And I know people who collect board games, so that seems kind of like a safe investment there. You got Coffee Stain and Fringe, who will focus on smaller games for PC and consoles, which again, smaller games, less risk. And you can always get on PlayStation or Xbox, or you can get on Steam, and you just have a smaller game that doesn't have that AAA budget. Of the 3, the one I see most at risk in the future is Middle-earth and Enterprises and Friends, because they're going to focus on the Lord of the Rings and the Tomb Raider IPs, and that's where most of your risk is going to be. Even though Tomb Raider and Lord of the Rings obviously are well-known, popular IPs, that's where going to be most expensive things are and the biggest risks are. So I think, if they can do like a mix of big games and smaller games, kind of like Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light, something like that, I think they'll be fine. But if they are doing larger like AAA games all the time based in those 2 universes, I think that could potentially be troublesome for them. But we'll see. But yeah, that's the one of the 3 arms where I potentially see some trouble, where there's the most risk. But we shall see. Really, Embracer doing almost anything is better than what they were doing. Just buying up things and then closing them after failing miserably to run the ship. So the ship has run aground, and now everyone has to get off the ship, and the crew has split off into 3 different parties, and they're all going their separate ways. Shinji Mikami. Well, speaking of going his separate ways, the Resident Evil director, Shinji Mikami, explains why he left Tango Gameworks and founded Kamui. This comes from Automaton Media. Wait a minute. Hold on. Are these the same bots? Are these damn bots from Helldivers? Are they running their own media campaign now? Is this propaganda, Matt?
We need to shut down that illegal broadcast.
Get your hell bombs ready, boys.
Just trying to spread this truth.
Whoa, Matt, is this treason now? The Automaton Press.
I think questioning some things out there breeds a healthy intellectual conversation.
Did Tricky put like a chip in your head or something? Has Tricky gotten to you?
He's playing Tricky this week.
It happened when I tried to get this broadcast off the ground and failed.
Well, this comes from Amber V over at Automaton Media. We'll keep our eyes on you there, Amber, in case you're against democracy.
Is it Amber V or Amber 5?
Oh God damn it, Matt!
Amber
now
5.
You're making me question it even more.
If Matt or Alex starts reading 1s and 0s, we're in trouble.
The famed director of Resident Evil, Shinji Mikami, and the recent Hi-Fi Rush explained what led to his departure from Tango Gameworks and the formation of Komoy. Mikami explained he had been planning on leaving Tango for around 8 years, but was tied to projects he felt compelled to see through. He wanted to create an environment that would allow young game creators to have a more frequent opportunities and gain experience. He also wanted to break free of his survival horror history and wanted to avoid adhering to styles of another company already established. He started a new company where he'll be able to create at his leisure. And hey, more people making games, is a good thing. Shinji Mikami also was the director of Shadows of the Damned, correct?
I believe so.
And that, of course, that's getting a remaster soon, isn't it?
First I've heard of it.
Oh, I'll have to look that up. But, I mean, if you haven't had a chance to play Shadows of the Damned, it's a wacky game, but it is a fun game. But, I mean, after working so much with survival horror, like, I can understand how he would kind of be pigeonholed into doing more survival horror, especially when, you're attached to Resident Evil and how that's kind of like the crown jewel of survival horror. So I can completely understand. You've been at Tango for a while. What do you have else to prove? You want to get over from survival horror and do something else, and you want to create a new space for people to create, younger creators to come in and do their thing and give them more freedom. I mean, it makes sense to me. Matt, any thoughts here?
First thought is responding to Saber in the chat. He said, wouldn't that be Grasshopper Games? Grasshopper Games, yes, did develop Shadows of the Damned. However, it was produced by Shinji Mikami. So he definitely had an involvement in it.
The Shadows of the Damned Remastered was officially announced back in June 8th of last year.
Okay. I mean, listen, guy's had a storied career. He's made games that have affected people in ways he could never dream. And, I've always said this, is that some of the best games ever that come out are when these larger developers split off and people go form and do their own thing. We had the conversation recently that you get these big companies and you lose a little bit of your gaming soul just grinding out your Call of Duties, your Maddens. But you go do something small, a passion project, something inventive and technically risky. And I just saw a recent article about the Slay the Spire dev saying doing something risky is actually about the least risky thing you could do in gaming because it gets your brain juices flowing. It makes you make something that other people haven't seen, and that breeds success. So for Mikami to go, I'm going to start my own thing, I'm going to do my own thing and hold myself to my own values, I think that gets you some of the best games out there.
Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming since he was the creator of Resident Evil, that he originally worked at Capcom and split off to help get Tango Gameworks off the ground.
Yeah, there was a book, I think it was called Tasty or something like that, a story of Resident Evil, and it talked about how Mikami, was handing reins off to other people that were up and coming because he wanted to do other things. So again, it's always an idea of if you stay where you are, you're not going to get any better or do anything great. And this is just more proof of that. And I think the best is still yet to come from Mikami.
Yeah, I mean, if he had never left Capcom, I'm reading up a little bit, but it says he left Capcom on Polygon, left Capcom in 2007 for Platinum Games, and he helped direct the third-person shooter Vanquish, which was very good. So had he not left Capcom, just kept there doing his own thing, we would have never gotten Vanquish. And of course, he would have never worked on Shadows of the Damned. Well, I would assume he would not have worked on Shadows of the Damned with Grasshopper Manufacturer, but from him leaving Capcom, which was a very safe space considering, how well regarded Resident Evil is, and take a risk and, go to the help of these other studios, a lot of these games that he's been a party to would have never been made. Now, of course, you do see certain things like you see, like, I hate to say this, but Keiji Inafune leaving Capcom, you get stuff like Mighty Number 9, which doesn't really work out that well. So sometimes the jump doesn't always work out. But this is certainly a case with Shinji Mikami where he's done well since leaving Capcom, and I'm sure he'll do well after leaving Tango Gameworks. He's got plenty of experience, and he's only 58 years old, so I'm sure he's got years and years and legs to create more games and to lead, the best and brightest of the next generation. So I think it'll work out well for him. Yield, I know I can't imagine you've played anything that Mr. Mikami has made, but any thoughts on him leaving to start his own thing to kind of break free from a larger company to kind of get a little more freedom for himself and this new studio he's made?
I mean, I think it's a good thing in the sense that, he stuck around because he wanted to finish the projects that he was tied to. And, he's been wanting to take off on his own for 8 years. There's nothing wrong with that. We hear a lot of guys that have worked their way up to the top of companies. And Evan Wells is the first one that came to mind that, they had a big success. They nurtured it as far as they wanted it to go. And then it was, you know what? I feel like now I'm being, boxed in as this is all I know how to do. And there's more I want to do. So I need to break away from this and go do my own thing so I can create my own thing. Otherwise, if I stay here, all they're going to have me do is what I've been successful at. So I like it because, even if it fails for him, you go back to horror and you'll be fine. So.
And, Mikami, he helped found Tango Gameworks, and obviously he feels comfortable enough with where the studio is and the talent there that he feels like he can leave and they can still be successful. And he's going to go plant some seeds and he's going to go flower those, water those in another garden. And hopefully something really good will grow out of it. But you look at someone, and I've always looked at a band, going to music and looking like a band like Rage Against the Machine. It's like, you guys broke up for a time. You guys were making so much fucking money during the 90s, and you guys broke up. Like, why wouldn't you, if you're just making all that money, why wouldn't you just keep doing the same thing? But then you think about it, you really think about it, and you get like Masahiro Sakurai at, I can't remember, Project Sora, I think is the name of the studio that has worked on Super Smash Brothers. That's a guy that has been there since the beginning of Super Smash Brothers, a wildly successful franchise for Nintendo on many levels. And if he wanted to, he'd be set for life. He could just keep making Super Smash Brothers games, with Nintendo, and it'd be, he'd have to put a ton of work in, but he knows the roadmap. He knows how to make a Super Smash Brothers game, and he knows how to direct it and lead the team and, provide post-launch support where they're making the game better. But he's kind of stepped away, and he says he doesn't want to do that, and he's not going to be working, at least for now, on the franchise anymore. He wants to potentially go do something different. So you get these game creators, just like I'm sure musicians and actors and, directors in Hollywood, where they've been doing something for so long, and they're like, you know what? I want to get my feet wet with something else. I want to move on and do something more creatively in this space. And honestly, I'm sure that a guy like Mikami, having played some of the games he's been involved with, and I'm sure that guy has got a ton of ideas that he can really, that he wants to get out there, and not just, like I said, like your survival horror games. Vanquish obviously is an example of a game that is not survival horror, and it's real good. Like, it's just an action shooter, like just a pure adrenaline. And that game, like, it's not a super long game, but it's also long enough to where it's like, this feels perfect. For the mechanics of the game and how much fun you have within it and how difficult it can be, like, it feels like the perfect length because it never overstays its welcome. And you want to see what a game director has out there. I would never want Mikami to just be stuck doing Resident Evil for the rest of his life. I would want him to get a chance to spread his legs, and whatever he wants to make is what he makes. So, and again, because he's been involved with Tango Gameworks, he now can leave it in a good place because he's worked with some of those people, and that company is now successful enough to kind of fly on its own. Like when Shigeru Miyamoto finally leaves Nintendo, that company will be fine without him because there are so many talented people working there. But now he can go found this other studio and help create another group of people or another stronghold to make video games. So personally, I see this only as a good thing. And while, part of me, I look at as someone who's not been say like Rage Against the Machine successful or rolling in the money as some of these people. When I used to think like, why, if you're making so much money and you're so successful, why wouldn't you just keep doing the same thing? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I now more understand the philosophy of people like, I've been doing this for so long and I want to do something new and I want to see what's beyond the horizon. Let's go out there and do more. Because you've seen, Stig, who just left Respawn and EA to go start his own new studio. People got more to share with, and they got more to do, and they got more ideas, and let's see what people can do when giving the freedom that they have to not work under a larger studio. Matt, sir, anything else to say on this, or are you ready to move on?
The other thing I'll say is in response to Rage Against the Machine, Saber's in chat saying how it's Rage on behalf of the machine now. I would actually kind of have to disagree, at least from the aspect of Tom Morello. He's still pretty active in the circles of Raging Against the Machine, so I'll just leave that at that.
Did all the band not get back together? Like, I thought Zach De La Rocha and all of them were back together.
No, I think...
Yeah. Or did some of them leave? Because I know
at some point they did all get back together, right? I'm not crazy.
Yeah, they did.
But I think it's now completely done. I think they had something that came out and they said, no, we're not doing anything anymore.
We tried this. We just so there was fallout with that band because they didn't like each other. Or there's some
there was something with Zach that they got upset about because they all left. The band left or kicked Zach out.
They did Audio Slave with
and then the rest of the band went with Chris Cornell got with them, and they did Audio Slave.
Yeah.
Which was some damn good music.
I think it's kind of like when Days the New left Travis Meeks behind to go with Hugo to make Tantric for the Louisville area people. They'll know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. That first album Tantric did was really good.
It was Breakdown and Astounded. Yeah. They did some good ass shit. And their lead singer's name was Hugo. That's badass. But yeah, so I get kind of dating ourselves here because Tantric was like early 2000s. That was high school for me. And I'm assuming high school for you all. Well, we yield.
No, I was out of school.
Oh, okay. But yeah, Matt, do we have any listener questions this week?
We do.
We get Tricky to give you a chance to cue up that sound.
Media, yeah.
Nope, we're not giving them a chance.
All right. All right, so, listener questions.
There were actually two well wishes,
Time
Zach,
to check my social media, yeah.
What? You're going to edit that out, right, Alex?
I said you're late.
I realize you just got out of the hospital, Tricky, and I'm really glad that you're doing better, but you're a horse's ass.
What?
You're asleep.
You're a horse's ass.
What?
Wait until I get my own... I got my own stream deck here, and I could start adding in some sounds and things like that. So we'll get this fixed. First up, Bearded Nerd Zach comes in and says, we wish Tricky the best, but it has truly become the Lord Starscream podcast. No more trophy horse here. So, and that's where Yield comes in and says, all hail Megatron, which I agree with. Rob Workman comes in and says, hope Michael is okay. Joe Priestley comes in and says, get well soon, Tricky. Oh, and fuck the Rangers.
I was just going to ask, there had to be something attached to that. Joe just can't say something nice, Tricky. He's got to throw in a little dig there.
Chat real quick. Parky comes in and says, they also did Prophets of Rage, but think that was a one and done thing. I never heard of that. And Parky says, Rangers up 1-0, by the way. Well, okay. Anyway, I saw more people wearing Rangers shirts this weekend. Man, a bunch of front runners out there.
Are they still playing the Capitals? Is that who they're playing still?
I think it's game 4 tonight.
They got a chance to sweep, or is it competitive at all?
Yep, game 4. I don't know. I don't know why we're talking about this. This is Rangers hockey. We don't care about Rangers hockey here.
You're right.
Unless we're talking about Wayne Gretzky 3D hockey. Back on the 64, that was the shit.
Can't miss 100% of the shots you can't. Well, God damn it! What was the quote?
You can't miss 100%. You can't make 100% of the shots you don't take.
There you go. Thank you. Saber comes in with a question, I guess specifically for me, but we'll go to you guys as well. Transformers Generation 1 will be in the movie theaters on May 15th, and a few other days they are doing season 1. Will any of you go to see it? I have been wanting a Transformers movie without humans for a long time, and I think this is a monkey's paw where we got what we wished for, and it's not exactly what we wanted. So,
wait, is this the same? Is this the same thing? Is it? Are they? Because I saw the trailer. Is this the same thing? This is not the original animated movie, right?
It's not the original animated movie. They are released there. I think for 40th anniversary, they're re-releasing the '86 movie in theaters, but this one, it's a brand new movie. Chris Hemsworth is playing Optimus Prime, and it's basically they're going back to before Optimus Prime became Optimus Prime. Yeah. And then before Megatron became Megatron, evidently. Yeah, and it's loosely following the story in that they were both friends. But then I think they meet up with Alpha Trion, and he ends up giving them the ability to transform, and that gives them superpowers and all whatnot. Anyway, I probably won't see it in the theaters. It looks a little too
quirky.
I don't want to say childish, because Transformers has always been childish, but it doesn't look like it has the storyline that I'm interested in.
I don't like the animation style. I'll throw that out there.
I don't mind it. I don't like the character designs.
To answer the question, I will probably not. I don't really go much to the movies anymore. I don't want to pay to go to the movies, although I did go pay to see Rise of the Beast. That's the last movie I went to see in theaters. Look, I'll say this. You can't tickle my taint and give me the Beast Wars and then not give me the Beast Wars again and expect me to give you my money. If you introduce the Maximals, I expect that they will follow in some kind of movie. So next time you bring the Maximals to the movie theater, I'll be there. Until then, I don't know. What, Matt? What
if it's the Maximals with G.I. Joe?
You know what? I'll see that. Fuck it, I'll see that. But
Okay.
isn't it? Aren't they doing Transformers versus G.I. Joe?
I don't know if it's versus.
I'm going to say
nobody knows.
You know what? I know how much you love G.I. Joe, Matt, or how highly you think of the G.I. Joes, but man, what a lopsided battle there. They're going to get wiped out.
I agree with that.
But no, I mean, you put the Maximals in almost anything, and yeah, I'll go see it, even if it's a G.I. Joe Transformers movie.
All right.
But I can't imagine it's not going to focus on the Autobots and the G.I. Joes and the Cobra. What, Cobra and the Decepticons?
I don't see. I was thinking about that. I don't see
Maximals versus the Power Rangers?
I don't see either one of those. Well, that's just dumb, because this is going to get a hot take because people are going to hate me for this. Power Rangers suck.
For those who can't see, Tricky suggested that in the chat. Yield, I will say that I understand why you feel the way you do, but that's hugely nostalgic for me, and I grew up watching it. So when they came out with the 30th anniversary, Once and Always last year, I watched the shit out of that.
Well, I know, but I just don't see like Cobra and the Decepticons like working together.
That's also a lot of characters to have in one movie. Let's be real.
So here's the thing. To Tricky's question, I think it would be hilarious to see Megatron fusion blast a Megazord right in the face, because that's what he'd do. He wouldn't even bother trying to do anything else.
Oh, I would root for the Decepticons from here till the cows came home, because I don't like Power Rangers.
Go ahead,
you notice what Matt didn't say there, folks. He said the Megazord, because he knew the Dragonzord wouldn't stand for that shit. And would tail whip Megatron into another fucking dimension. Megatron would get bitch slapped into another dimension by the Dragonzord.
Here's the problem. Green Ranger would try to call in the Dragonzord, and Soundwave would be back there scrambling signals that the Dragonzord would never hear the flute. So, Dragonzord's not showing up.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see what happens when the Megazord, Dragonzord, and Tor all get together and they form the Ultra Megazord or whatever it was and just shoot that fucking beam just to destroy everything in his path.
Devastator will just level them.
Like, I don't care if you don't like Power Rangers. The Zords were fucking badass. Those were cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. But like you said, Devastator, or you get Bruticus in here, who's a war machine. Like he would say, "Oh, you want to combine? We'll combine," and then he would just pick up the Megazord by the head and just body slam him. Oh my!
Apparently, Tricky regrets bringing this up because he did not expect us to roll that long with this.
I've always never liked Power Rangers because I feel, even though I've been told that Power Rangers came first, I always felt that it was a live-action Voltron ripoff. So,
the Japanese show might have existed before Voltron, but Voltron was before the Power Rangers in the America.
And that's what I'm going with, and that's why I say I'm a Voltron dude, and Power Rangers was just a live-action ripoff. So, I'm dying on that hill.
I agree. In chat, Parky says we need another new great Transformers game, and I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely, 100%.
Devastation was awesome, but we need something again.
Hey, here's the thing. We talked about last week, Sony trying to make a bid to buy Paramount. Sony could then make what? I guess there would have to be a deal still in place with Hasbro, but Paramount obviously owns the movie license. If they buy Paramount, maybe Sony starts making Transformers games.
As long as they put it into the hands of someone good.
Naughty Dog, The Last of Us Autobots.
Oh, dear God, no.
All right.
Amy Hennig returns to Naughty Dog.
Well,
to make the best story-driven Transformers game.
I was going to say, we know the story was good at that point.
All right. One more question from our boy Will, who says, how heartbroken are you that Horny Boy levels have been tampered down on Stellar Blade with the first update? Will you be playing it offline? For those of you who are not familiar, Stellar Blade is a new game. I forget who developed it, but the protagonist is a female android robot, something with fleshy bits, and she is very gorgeous, very well proportioned, and has multitudes of costumes that you could choose from. So
you're saying she could be a DLC character in the next Dead or Alive fighting game, right?
I think she's... Yeah.
Dead or Alive Volleyball reference. 2 or Dead or Alive Beach or DOA Beach Volleyball 3.
You know what I'm talking about.
I got that reference, Yield. Anyway, the point is evidently before there were certain costumes and things available, and before the game came out, evidently there was the game is now patched to make certain section. They patched out certain sections that made her, that would have been featuring her in like less skimpy outfits and things like that.
Get out of here! A Japanese JRPG with scantily clad women? Stop it!
I watched the Sphere Hunters review of the game, and she covered a lot of good grounds and says the action is really good. There's some parts of the game that are the gameplay mechanics are great, but she says that the story itself is not the greatest. And let's take that back to things like Bayonetta and Nier Automata, which featured similarly sexually attractive female lead protagonists. But the games and the stories and everything held up. That's why we've gotten multiples of those games. And here, I think, I keep hearing how great the animators did on Eve, the main protagonist. And I'm not surprised.
I'm sure they put a lot of time into that.
Well, I mean, you can tell that from the state of play.
So it's unfortunately, if the story doesn't hold up, I don't think you're going to get it in the same levels that Bayonetta or Nier Automata are held to. So I hope it's gotten good grades, it's gotten good reviews, but I don't know if it's going to hold up against the test of time like those other games have.
S rank for Schwing. No, like I had never played Nier Automata, but I will say Bayonetta. Honestly, like the story, I couldn't even tell you what the story was in that fucking game, but the action is top notch, like second to none when it comes to like an action game. So Bayonetta is a phenomenal game. And I think really, for me personally, it wasn't the story that made that game, it was the gameplay, because it was just incredible. It was so much fun to play that game. So much so that you would likely just forget that there's a bunch of horny dudes out there, touching themselves to Bayonetta.
Listen, Bayonetta had the one-handed mode. Just saying.
Well, let's just say I didn't need that, but for whoever did, I'm glad they were conscious enough and considerate enough to throw that in there for you. But
Roboto Love said with Bayonetta it was the glasses that did it for him. So I think he was using the one-handed mode in that game.
It was the librarian look. The where's your card catalog?
Yield, or you have more, Alex?
No. I've gotten it out of me.
Go ahead, Yield.
No, I'm good.
Okay. And that's it for the questions this week. Thank you to everybody who wrote in.
And that is going to bring us to the topic of the week. All right, this comes from Variety.com and is written by Robert Steiner. Headline reads, Video game preservation has become an industry urgency. This past month, Ubisoft shut down servers for The Crew, making the online-only racing game inaccessible. A few days later, Nintendo shut off their online servers for the Wii U and 3DS, which removed features such as online multiplayer. If you remember, last year, the respective eShops for these platforms were shut down, which made 1,000 digital-only games unavailable. At a congressional hearing in April, proposal was made that would grant video game researchers remote access to archived games. However, the Entertainment Software Association stated until preservationists operate in a way that might be comforting to the owners of the valuable intellectual property, the ESA would not support any exempted access. There's much more to this article, but to cap this off, the following chart shows by system its percentage of games that are still commercially available. And I will read that off here real quick. All historical games, 13.27%. Commodore 64, 4.5%. Game Boy Family, 5.87%. And PlayStation 2, 12%. So just by those game platforms, and even by all historical games, all historical games are under 15%. And even for the PlayStation 2, it's only 12. So most game libraries are not currently available to people to play.
So commercially available, meaning
commercially available.
You can't just go out and.
So we're not talking about
games you could buy.
We're not talking about if you go to an indie game shop or a half-price books and buy a a copy of a N64 SNES game you found there, or if you go to a trade show or a con or something like that and buy something for someone. Those are not included in these numbers. We're talking about going to like an Amazon or a Walmart or something like that.
Well, or buying
digital
it
store.
online, digital stores,
Steam or the PlayStation Store or Xbox. Yeah. So yeah, the numbers aren't. I mean, I know that people, are we going to go back and play every game we've ever played before again? No, probably not. But there is kind of a great need to preserve more games for the sake of preserving the history itself. I would say so, yes. Or at least bump up that percentage to where, it's not 13%, In an ideal world, you would want to see a higher percentage. You want to see more games commercially available, so if you wanted to play them, you could. Where just things aren't just lost to time. Yield. Do the numbers shock you? Are they surprisingly low to you for how many games commercially you can buy from most game retailers or most people that sell games? As someone who has trumpeted the importance of buying physical games.
No, not really, but I do agree with the fact that there should be, I know it's been kind of hinted around, and I think that we've been kind of late getting on this bandwagon about a way to preserve old games, so that way they're there. I know that companies want to hold on to their IPs and not open it up to where, you could get a lot of old games on one system or one disc or whatever. But there needs to be something to move forward to where you could preserve the games and be able to get a hold of them. I mean, I know there will come a point where I will be like, I'm done with current games, and I will want to go back and play my older games. Like I can just feel it. I know it sounds dumb and everybody says it, but it's one of the things I've been thinking about on and off lately. That I think there will be a time where I'm like, I'm done. I want to go back and do the old stuff.
I kind of get the way you feel there, because at Louisville Arcade Expo they had a big projection screen and they had Mike Tyson's Punch Out. They're playable. You know, I've beaten Mike Tyson before numerous times. I've also beaten Super Punch Out. So Punch Out's a game that I've always been pretty good at. So I remember, I was able to beat Great Tiger, Bold Bull first try, no problem. But then I get to Piston Honda the second time and a world of trouble. So I kind of want to go back and start playing Mike Tyson's Punch Out again and get really good at it, because that was a game I always enjoyed. So I get kind of where you come from, where you talk about going back and playing older games. Master, your thoughts on this, because I can't imagine you're going to say that, no, we don't need to preserve game history. It's all about the future.
So this is kind of getting into that area where we ask the question about getting this versus game preservation versus game piracy. And, going to chat, Saber talks about how he'd like to play the Bouncer again for the PS2.
I played that. That was one of the second game I ever bought for the PS2. The first game was NBA Live 2001. Don't hold it against me. Bouncer was the second game, though.
Not holding it against you. But the Bouncer I actually bought for a good friend of mine from a secondhand store, because it was a game he wanted and he wanted to be able to play again. And I say this, and realizing with today's technology, this becomes a very fluid thought process. Has to be carefully maneuvered. But in my mind, the second you as a company make a game commercially unavailable for somebody to purchase, all arguments of piracy go out the window, because there is nothing you are gaining. You are not losing anything by somebody pirating a game that you no longer are going to make money off of. If you then turn around and let's say you're like Nintendo or Sony or Sega, and you release a classic console that has that game available, that you can go out there and commercially buy it, then I agree. Piracy is back on the no-fly list, that you shouldn't be pirating that game because it's being made available commercially for you to buy. The issue I have with this is there's people out there, altruistic people, who want to preserve games because there's things you can learn by preserving source code or better versions of games, because that's happened where people take games, they get the source code, and they make improvements onto it because the developer abandoned it decades ago. So it's, in chat, you got Roboto saying, bite the bullet, open your wallet, and buy original hardwares and games. I agree if that's an availability to you, but not all of the shops have them around. And you've seen in certain markets where it gets utterly ridiculous trying to buy a game that has an inflated price. Look at what Wata did with Super Mario Bros. 3. They rated a game 9.8 and it's only $3 million. I disagree that that you need to do that, because at some point that original hardware is not going to work anymore. Look at all the things that happen with the new technology, that if you forget the CMOS battery or they programmed the system incorrectly and a date goes wrong, it kills the system. Look at the original NES. Was not meant to last because the front loaders all crapped out, because I had one of those, and they towards the end of the life cycle they made the top loaders, which are now more rare and harder to find. But yeah, your old NES, your front loader is not going to work forever. It's probably already crapped out by now, honestly. What happens when every single piece of hardware is completely dead, that you no longer have access to the old games? Roboto says the sense of superiority being a video game collector outweighs the hurt to your wallet. And I would say having something physically on your shelf is good, except when you can't use it. My old NES is okay. You need to do the shifty jiggle with the cart,
blow in the cartridge, stick it in, wiggle it, push it down.
Like you're a virgin on his first date with a girlfriend trying to get everything to work properly with two fingers. But what happens when Nintendos don't work anymore? And what happens when there's only 5 NESs left and it costs $1 million per console if you want to play those old games again?
You fight people in a cage match for them, Matt. That's what you do. You fight people in a cage match.
My fight would be over very quickly.
Celebrity deathmatch.
I always knew you were the badass of the group, Matt. But I'll say, Matt, real quick, word association. If I said Sion Barzad and the Kolefo, you know who the third part of that equation would be?
No.
Volt Kruger. Man, it's 3 protagonists from The Bouncer.
I never played The Bouncer.
No one has ever mentioned The Bouncer before, so when Roboto said The Bouncer, I had to throw it out there. Had to tell everyone that I
Saber said The Bouncer.
Oh, Saber, okay. Well, Roboto should also play The Bouncer as well. But yeah, I was actually, during the most recent sale, I think that's ongoing on the PlayStation Network, they have it's a Capcom compilation of the 4 games of Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, and DuckTales. And I thought about buying it because it's on sale and it's pretty cheap. I'm like, hey, you know what? These are old games. I really like Rescue Rangers. And this
DuckTales was tough, was hardest.
Yeah, I mean, to have them on the PlayStation 5 would just be nice, just to, be able to play these old games. But that's one mere example. And we don't always have the luxury of that. And DuckTales got a remastered version on the PS4 as well. So they tend to kind of churn out the same games. And there's a wealth of games out there. Like Battletoads and Battlemaniacs is one game that I can think of. Like, if you don't have the SNES cartridge, can you play that game? It's a great beat 'em up, but can you play it? Probably not. So while they are doing some, like these modern consoles are putting more and more games, more older beat 'em ups and stuff on the consoles, there's just not nearly enough access to a lot of these older games. And I think really what Sony should be focusing on, PlayStation Plus, is their classics catalog. Forget trying to put like PS4 games and all this stuff on extra. They really need to be focusing on, like, their biggest focus needs to be on that classics catalog under the biggest, most expensive chunk of PlayStation Plus. They need to be focused on the PS1 games, the PS2 games. Like, that's where their focus needs to be, I think, is getting those games up there. Because really, if you go through the list, I played Twisted Metal and Twisted Metal 2 last summer. They really haven't updated that list all that much since then. There's not been a lot of additions. So that's one area where I really think that, and Nintendo, their support, they're adding more games to the N64 channel, but like these older channels where, that would be a great way to preserve these old games and add new games too. Like, they're just not adding content fast enough. I don't know if there's just not enough help there to get this done, but that's where I really see these programs lacking and these subscription services lacking, is that these are areas where you could get more, like, better access to older games, and it's just not happening fast enough for me. But Matt, I completely agree with you about if there is not a way to buy something, like even a CD, like an MP3, a piece of music, if you cannot buy that commercially, if you can't spend your money on it, you have no other option. I don't see any issue with, like, say, going to YouTube and, ripping that music from YouTube on, like, using some kind of like software. I mean, there's software to do that online. You can find it. But if you can't buy something, why should you just have to go without it? If someone's not going to, and it's not like, if Sony has some plan, 20 years down the road, they're going to bring back out some older game that you haven't played in a long time. Well, you don't know that. You have no idea. All you know is right now it's not available to you. So in that regard, I don't have an issue with piracy like you. We're in step on that, because I think that, well, if I can't buy it, I got to play it somehow. I mean, I don't have to, but I want to. So why not?
And Roboto brings it back up that you buy a Retron and you can plug in, to your TV via HDMI and play old NES and Genesis games. It still misses the point of someday, just like CDs and DVDs and Blu-rays get disc rot, someday the copper on those items are going to wear out. Those hardware cartridges are going to fail at some point. And I can't even say it's wear and tear, just over time, those pieces, due to moisture and atmosphere, are going to fail. And at that point, nothing you do, short of being a somebody who can repair old cartridges like that using solder and some ingenuity, are going to be able to fix these games. So there needs to be a way to preserve it. Can you believe that, in the year 3000, that somebody might not be able to play the original Sonic the Hedgehog because it's not available on any service. The Nintendo online store stopped working, 200 years ago, and they're no longer carrying everything over, and there's no other way to play it. No, the only way to do that is through game preservation, which unfortunately is going to be labeled piracy in many circles.
Yield, sir, where do you think that where piracy and, where do you draw the line on that? Are you completely against it, or do you see Matt's point where it's like, well, can't buy it, so I guess I'll get it this way?
I agree with Matt's point that if there's not a way to buy it, I find it really hard to believe your argument that it's piracy. If you can't go buy it anywhere, if you can go buy it anywhere, okay, I see your argument for piracy, but yeah, I agree with Matt.
And Will Roboto brings up that, they're putting out, sometimes there are third-party things that you can, or like classic game systems that you can plug in and play that have preloaded games. But, those may come with some of the bigger games, which is nice that, something like some of the harder to find games that you may have to pay for physical on eBay, like hundreds of dollars, they became, less rare by having something like the SNES Classic come out. But then there's other games like, say, bring up a random game. We already brought the Bouncer. What about Rival Turf for the SNES? If you want to play Rival Turf, I know beat 'em up for the SNES, you may have a hard time finding that because it wasn't nearly as popular as something like Double Dragon or like Super Double Dragon or, some of the other like Turtles in Time or some of the other beat 'em ups. So the sad fact is that even with Classic's catalog, it just kind of barely scratches the surface of what we've all been through and played and experienced in our game history, collectively. So I don't know that there's a perfect solution. I don't know that we will ever get to a point where the ESA and all the game publishers and developers will have a perfect solution to this, where there's like just one giant video game museum that you can pay access to a month. Hey, you pay $20 a month and you get access to any game you've ever wanted, as a collaboration. I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I don't think that all games, or even half the games that were commercially available at some point, will ever be commercially available. I think we're going to kind of trend around this, 13 to 20%, where they will make some games available and others just will be lost to time. But, that's where emulation and unfortunately piracy does come up, where it's kind of really, I don't trust game makers to really do it. I know that some people within the industry want to do it and make it happen, but I don't trust the ESA is going to make it happen. I think really what it is, it's up to the game community to kind of keep games alive. Matt, I assume that you would be down with that.
Yeah, and it's to the point where, listen, I know Roboto does game collecting, and you got people out there like Daryl who does reselling. He's collecting for his own personal collection, but a majority of what he's doing is grabbing games and putting them out to the market, and thereby, in some cases, driving up the price of these games. So Roboto's in there saying that it's hell in retro video game collecting, which I'm actually saying, Roboto, I'm surprised that you don't support more video game preservation, because that means I'm not out there buying up those video games that you want to buy and put in your collection.
Well, we'll see if Roboto responds to that. But I mean, yeah, it's become one of those things where I think Goodwill now is charging higher prices for certain items. Like, they know that people will come in, trying to buy cheap and try to resell on, various different platforms. So, I mean, game collecting obviously is becoming a even more popular thing, probably more popular now than ever before, because people see what's coming with, more digital games kind of surpassing physical media and being the preferred form of delivery for a lot of companies out there. And people see that and they're like, whoa, we got to pump the brakes, because we need to be buying movie discs. We need to be buying records. We need to be buying video game cartridges from the N64, SNES era. We need to be buying discs for the Sega Saturn, because, a lot of this stuff will not be available, and I want to have access to it. So I think that, especially in the case of Roboto, is that it's going to be driving prices up because more and more people are going to be invested in collecting now, more so than ever before.
Well, and that's part of it. And Robato's response is that Daryl does filthy reselling. He's part of the problem, and that he does both, but he feels shame when he pirates. It's like I said, if it's not commercially available, it's not piracy. And this goes back to the other argument that if buying is not owning, then piracy isn't stealing.
When in the last, what I would say, 22 years or 20 years has Square Enix ever shown that they gave two shits about the bouncer? To bring that back. When? Outside of its initial release, Square Enix has never shown that they gave a shit about that game.
You're not going to see it.
I don't ever suspect. Like, could it be a game that I see come into the PlayStation Network, the classic section, because Sony has a good relationship with Square Enix and they need some games? But yeah, I could see that. But I could also see a future where that game never comes out ever again and is only playable by people who have a PlayStation 2 or a backwards compatible PS3 and a copy of the game. I could easily see that being. I had some other games like, you think of something like Dark Watch, which was a fun shooter. That I don't think is commercially available at this point. Ghost Hunter, which was a really fun game that I enjoyed playing for the PS2. The first boss was like this guy had been eaten by this crocodile in the swamp town, and in the end, the boss of the level was this crocodile who had eaten this guy. Well, the guy basically somehow became a fucking giant in this crocodile stomach, and he basically was kind of like one of the El Gigantes in Resident Evil, where the guy basically came out of the crocodile and used the crocodile as an arm, and you're basically fighting this giant guy who'd at one point been eaten by a crocodile. It's fucking wacky, man. But that game was fun, and probably not commercially available, and likely we'll never see it again. So, yeah, I mean, there are games out there. Like, I've seen Xbox copies of Dark Watch in the wild, but don't own an Xbox, so I can't play it. Buying it's not going to do me any good. And they're sure as hell never going to come out with that Dark Watch sequel that was rumored to be coming out at some point. So, yeah, I mean, there has to be a better solution, but unfortunately now it all pretty much just rests on the game community, because as far as Sony and Microsoft and the ESA, ESA is essentially killed off E3. I mean, they may try to bring it back, but E3 as it is now is just kind of not happening.
It's dead. It's not.
If they're doing that, if they're getting rid of E3, essentially all these companies are focusing on the future and where we're moving in the future in game delivery and cloud services and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. So to think that they're really laser focused on game preservation is, even Sony won't even, don't want to deal with backwards compatibility all that much because they don't really see much value in that. I mean, sure, they'll put, some games in the cloud, but is the Classics Collection for PlayStation 5 ever going to satisfy everybody? No, there's no possible way. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's really up to the community at this point. So, but any closing thoughts, gents, on this chat, or any kind of, Matt, any comments from the chat?
No, that's it from the chat.
All right. Well, I think that we need to wrap this up for this week. Guys, let's go ahead and get some shout outs. Yield, we'll start with you, sir.
Shout out to everybody who was hanging out in the Twitch chat tonight. Glad you guys stopped by. Shout out to Alex and Matt for recording this evening. Shout out to Tricky being quiet in the background.
Probably because he's watching the Rangers game.
I did quotations there, Alex. Quiet in the background.
Oh, I couldn't see you, Yield. You're not on camera,
yeah,
so I
know.
didn't see that.
I know. Anyway. Shout out to Nitro and Alex for Rocket League on Thursday. Shout out to Prepare to Die, Earthscum, and the Brain 76 for some Helldivers on Friday. Shout out to my wife who found me the Throne trilogy of books at a garage sale this past weekend. And shout out to my nephew who has had a birthday today as we were recording. So that'll do it for me this week.
What you doing with those books, Shield? All the reading you need to be doing is in video games.
I do need to get back. Well, see, the funny thing about that is she's like, I got you something. I said, oh, cool. And I pull them out, and I'm like, oh, these are really cool. I'm like, but I already own these. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I own these. I was like, but these are re-releases. She's like, well, how can you tell? I said, well, one, the covers are all different. from what I remember. I'm like, and 2, it says right across the top here, the Legacy Collection, which that's what Disney did when they got lazy and wanted to write new crappy versions and jettisoned all of the expanded universe. And I'm like, and if you flip it over, it says Disney and Lucasfilm on the back. I'm like, but I was still appreciative that she got them for me.
You know, sometimes it's just best to say just thanks.
I did say thanks. And then she's like, you don't seem as excited as I thought you would be. And I'm like, well, because I own these books already.
Bad sir, your shout-outs.
Alex Yield, thanks for entertaining my attempt to be the streamer tonight. So that failed. So Tricky, thank you for stepping in as you came from home from the hospital today. Tricky wants the community to know that he sends his love. He'll be back next week. And that
Tricky made sure to be home for that Rangers game tonight.
He told the doctor, listen, I'm going to be home for this game.
There's a hospital somewhere looking for an escaped patient.
He also wants everybody to know Goddess had a birthday yesterday, April 27th. So please send love there.
Happy birthday, Tina.
Happy birthday, Goddess.
I think I'll say something about government names. Shout out
might.
to Roboto and Saber. So with that, Saber and I did a recording for his Hunter Houston ESG podcast today, focusing on Star Wars, because next week is May the 4th be with you. So be on the lookout for that. Shout out to Will and the PlayStation Ain't Dead podcast, which goes on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. So tune into that. Go to channel3.gg to gamify your social media, earn some XP, play some mini games, talk games with your fellow communities and gamers. It's a lot of fun. Come on out to that. And then shout out to my wife, V. Thank you for everything you do on and off the show.
Give a shout out to our awesome community, the fuel to the fire that's Trophy Horrors. Thank you all so very much for supporting us, and however you do. This thing would not run without you all. So truly, thank you for every ounce of support you show for us. It means everything. Give a shout out to Tricky. Glad he's home from the hospital. Again, I think maybe the Rangers game might have had something to do with that. But if you've ever been to a hospital or a medical facility, there's probably no worse place to be. You just want to be home. So glad Tricky can play PlayStation from home tonight and enjoy the Rangers game in the sanctity of his own dwelling. Shout out to Yield and Matt for recording tonight. Also a shout out to Zelda, because doggies are awesome. We love the puppies. And last but not least, give a shout out to my awesome and loving girlfriend, Ashley. I love you, hon. And yeah, that is going to bring me to the end of my shout outs. That is episode 619 of Trophy Horrors. We thank you all very much for listening in with us this week. And until next week, happy Trophy Hunt.
See ya.
All hail Megatron.
The theme song is Venus by the band Even off their album Zenith. Permission granted by the band and 12 Stone Records. You can find them on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/evenphilippines.